Hello and welcome back to Schamberger Labs. I am Rob Schamberger, the guy who puts the Schamberger in the labs, and still working on this Charlotte Flair painting from her grand entrance at WrestleMania 33 with the fireworks, and actually focusing in on the fireworks this week. I started it last week, and I'm going to add a couple more coats and also add in a few more of the finer details in the far background. And while we've got that playing, I thought it would be fun to do a Q&A, so I put a call for that out on the Twitter at Rob Schamberger on there if you want to subject yourself to the horrors of Twitter. And here are some of the questions that I will attempt to answer. Well, I'm going to answer them. We'll see if I do a good job or not. And I am going to butcher everyone's name. We'll just assume I'm doing this intentionally, but it's probably just that I'm a Midwesterner and I don't talk well. So we've got Wolf Low 523, Josh Wolf, asking, who is the hardest wrestler to paint? These are sports entertainers, pal. The hardest to paint, I actually have the hardest time with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I even let him know this when we were together the last time at an event, WrestleMania week in Dallas, name drop. It's hard with him because what's going on is, one, he's bald, and two, he's a natural blonde, and three, most of our favorite moments with him, our favorite memories of him, are him in motion. Like, he's always moving his head, he's moving his whole body around. So it's really hard to get the energy of Stone Cold through a static still image. And then on top of that, because he's a natural blonde and is bald, if the light hits him a certain way, his facial hair and eyebrows disappear. So what's left, I have to get exactly right. And if I don't, it bizarrely looks like Kane without a mask on. I don't know what's going on there, but it's a weird thing that happens. So next, got a question from Sal Garrica. I'm sure I did that completely wrong. How do you decide on the pose to draw? Are you watching on TV and thinking that's the shot I like for that particular wrestler, sports entertainer pal? Or is it more of looking back on their work and already having in mind a pose or a shot of them? It's a variety of all of those things. It's the same kind of thing that I have in mind for doing an overall piece, right? Like, sometimes I want to use a certain style or technique or certain tools, and trying to find the right superstar, sports entertainer, for what I have in mind. And then also, like, do I want to do more of a close-up on them? Do I want to get across one of their signature moves, finisher, whatever? Or sometimes, yeah, while I'm watching the show, I'll think, wow, that would be a really cool one to do. It's a lot of those things that go into it, a lot of considerations, and it's different for every piece. I try to take a modular approach to this. It's something I learned from a former studio mate of mine, Paul Andrews, studio that we used to have together. He wanted to keep it modular because he's a photographer, and so he would need to change up backdrops or lighting or placement of furniture depending on the shoot he was doing. So he wanted as big open a space as possible that he could then move around things as needed to get the desired effect that he wants. And I take that same approach with my paintings. I try to be as open as possible, because if you get stuck in a certain way of working, you may you may lose touch with what you're wanting to do. You may create artificial barriers that prevent you from doing something that could be fun to make or visually exciting or entertaining for fine folks like you to look at. Next up is my good friend Karen Peterson. Hey, Karen Sensei. I think I said that right. I don't know. On the Twitter, asking, while working on any given piece of art, do you listen to specific music, curate playlists, just set your library to a chaotic shuffle, or just listen to the cats mill about the house? She knows about the cats. Have you thought about including playlists in your newsletter? That's a fun one at the end. I actually don't listen to a lot of music while I paint. Sometimes I do, but not so much. It's more TV shows with a lot of good dialogue, or podcasts, or over the past couple of years, I've introduced audiobooks as well. So I'm finishing up the last of the Lonesome Dove books right now by Lee McMurtry. I think that's his first name. I'm enjoying them quite a bit. There's, things that don't age too incredibly well, but I'm enjoying those quite a bit. The Expanse books, I did all those as audiobooks while I was working. Some choice memoirs. And then, like certain shows, whether it's revisiting, like I just finished up a rewatch of the remake of Battlestar Galactica. Skipped some bits here and there in the first couple seasons, just because I remembered, the big points of what happened in there, and I didn't really need to revisit some of those episodes. So a lot of times it'll be shows that I've seen before, that I can just kind of have playing, so that what's happening on screen isn't so much of a distraction so that I'm watching that instead of painting. That's why I don't very often have wrestling on while I'm painting, because I want to watch the wrestling. And if I'm watching the wrestling, I'm not doing the painting. So a lot of that kind of thing more. Also, even though my wife Katie and I both work from home most of the time, I'm for the larger portion of my day, I'm alone in the studio by myself. I like to hear some human voices talking to remind me what that is like. Okay, now we've got at Ref Marsh, who has been a great supporter of the work in a lot of different ways, online and picking up the art. So thanks, Marsh. When developing your style, how do you shake using too much influence from other artists you admire? Great question. Sometimes it's right there on the sleeve, and I try to be conscious of that. Even to the point of there was a Naomi painting that I did that was heavily inspired by the work of Jack Kirby. And because it was such a heavy influence on there, and I used a lot of elements from Jack Kirby's art, if you look closely next to my signature, I've got After Jack on there as an acknowledgement. Wanted to make sure people didn't think I was just lifting some Kirby, as Hollywood does. I wanted to show my respect. This was a piece of respect and admiration to Jack. But other times there's influence can be a little heavier than what I had intended, and it's piece by piece. Because sometimes you want to do a style study of someone else, because at the end of the day, art is all just problem solving and finding other artists whose work I like a lot. If I do a style study of them, even within one of my own finished pieces, I'm learning a lot from that. I try to acknowledge that as much as I can, whether like physically on the piece, like I just discussed, or in the descriptions of the paintings. Sometimes you'll see me mention that in there. And sometimes it's less conscious than I had intended. And when I'm done, I'm like, oh boy, that looks like a Brian Stelfreeze or a J.H. Williams III piece. Not something that I had intended, but that just kind of comes through because like everything in life, when you've got a heavy influence on you, it comes through, right? Like you may find yourself saying things that you heard from your parents or a close friend in your life. It comes through in different ways that we don't always expect. But I try to not do it too heavy-handed because I want people to go get that person's work instead of me like kind of dipping too heavily from it. That said, if you've seen my work and if you're familiar with the work of David Mack, you can definitely tell that there was a period where he was a pretty heavy influence on me. And I was next to him at a convention once, and I went and bought one of his originals. Like, hey, thank you. Thank you for putting me in a position to be able to buy your work, and I am now getting this piece from you as a thank you for that. Try to do the right thing as best we can. Okay, now we've got Hawkster 1982, Dale Hawks. Is there any current wrestler that you don't want to paint? And on the flip side, is there any that you want to paint but have a block and not sure where to start? Sports entertainer, pal. These are superstars. Yes. I don't know that I want to name any names, just because these are people I work with, and maybe I caught them on a bad day, right? Or also, like, maybe they won't be around too long, so I don't need to make a thing about me not getting along with this person. And mostly it comes down to that, like a personal thing. But that's really rare, to the point that I really try to not make a thing out of it. I'm pretty patient on those fronts, and also like maybe I try to leave room for growth for people, right? Like I like to think that every day I'm trying to be a better person than I was yesterday. I'm going to therapy every week, sometimes more than once a week, to try to grow and be a better person, and I leave room for others to do that as well. So someone that I may have a problem with today, I'm not necessarily going to tomorrow. The second part of the question, is there someone I want to paint but not sure where to start? I definitely have that. And the way that I say it is trying to find a way in. I want, like I always say for my paintings, to not just look like the subject, but to give the same energy as what it's like to watch them. And with that, I don't always want to just do a representational portrait of the person. Now, sometimes I do have the select series that I do that are just straightforward portraits. And so some people that I may not have that weigh in with them. I may do a select series until either their character grows or I find a way that fits with my approach with painting. So like one that's currently on my mind, bizarrely, is the Street Profits. Love these guys. Love them personally. Montez Ford is just one of the smoothest, nicest dudes. I come across feeling like a better person every time I get to talk with him, and love watching them work. And it's purely a limitation on my end of finding the best way to represent them with my own artistic approach. I'm getting closer and closer all the time. So if you're waiting for a painting of two amazing wrestlers with some red Solo cups, it is coming sooner than later. Just trying to figure out the right way in. And boy, like, both of them are pretty young guys and relatively new into the world of WWE, and what a massive future they both have ahead of them. Like, just a fan on every level. Now we've got Art of Jason asking, why is a nickel larger than a dime? I don't know the real world answer on that. Also, is a nickel made out of nickel? I don't know the answer to that either. Why do we still have pennies? It costs more than a penny to make a penny. That's where we're at in this world. Why do we still have that? Although, as someone who owns a business and markets that business, one of maybe the greatest moment in marketing history was the person that came up with the idea of 99 cents. Because $1.99 sounds a lot cheaper than $2. But that doesn't answer your question, Jason. I let you down, and I'm very sorry about that. Next up, Intruder Timmy, I think I pronounced that right, asks, what's the best and worst wrestling matches you've ever seen? I try my best to be positive. I don't want to get into the worst stuff. But, you asked me a question, I'm going to do my best to answer it. So what I feel on that is I did watch that, and I forget who all was in it, but the infamous mixed tag match from quite a while back, 20 plus years, probably on Raw. That was rough. Like, even the announcers gave up on it. Best to everyone involved in that, and I hope that they're living full and meaningful lives. Best match I've ever seen. That's also a tough one, and you guys are putting me on the spot because these are all people I work with, so someone's going to ask, why didn't you say my match? But so on that front, I'm just going to say, like, what match meant the most to me, because at the end of the day, this is a subjective thing, right? Like, what meant the most. And so they're, still pretty rough to answer that. Maybe because it's just recent and top of mind and just the fun we were having watching it. But this year's WrestleMania with Austin Theory just Theory, at the time he was still Austin Theory, versus Pat McAfee, that then somehow turned into Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon, which then turned into Vince McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. That in and of itself was just incredible. Also, like, same night, right? Same night that we got the Jackass match with Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville. That was just high art. Like, frame that match, hang it in the loop. That was amazing. But the one that I started off with there with McAfee at the center and Vince McMahon, of course, we were watching it from WrestleMania Access, my wife and I, and the other people that were working at Access. We had it up on one of the big display screens, and we were all just having a blast, losing our minds at Vince taking the shirt off and the tie and the creepy face that he had. That was just wildly fun, and did like there have been rumblings of Vince getting involved in the match, but just every part of it super delivered, and it was fun, right? It was the E in WWE. It was entertaining. I just had a blast with it. Is it the very best I've ever seen? I don't know, but it's the one I most recently had the most fun with. So that's my answer on that. What do you think is the most... Okay, this is from Samantha Peace. Again, I think I am pronouncing that right. What do you think is the most positive societal change from your generation to the next? She throws softballs. So I'm Gen X, and the next generation would be millennials. I feel like the most positive societal change has been ownership of your true identity. I recently came out as bi publicly. I'm in a monogamous, loving relationship with my wife, Katie. But with some of all of the really bad anti-LGBTQ legislation that's been happening here in America of late, I felt I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. And also, I overall just wanted to be my true open self with everyone, because why shouldn't I be? And Gen X as a whole, we grew up with the don't ask, don't tell phrasing a lot, with, being gay being a bad thing, and a lot of phobic jokes and thoughts. And I feel like millennials and, I'm sorry, but the generation past millennial are it seems to me from the outside looking in, seem to be way more comfortable being who they truly are at a much younger age. Because, man, like when I really first realized that I was bi, was in junior, senior year of high school, and that would not have been a safe place for me to be that way. And so overall, the culture has been more accepting, except for recently, and some of the legislation that's happening, some of it that's on the horizon, not so hot. It's a big bummer. Sorry to bring this down here a bit, but this is also me being my true self with all of you. Your vote does matter, and look at everything that your candidate stands for and what it's going to do to people who may not be like you, but who may be like me. Not so great. Okay. Casey_Owen. We're going to try to bring this up a bit here. When you finish a piece and the wrestler changes their hair / appearance so soon after, like Edge recently, Is it annoying, or is it just an opportunity to do them in another way? Both. Yeah, it can be both of those things. I remember I had just put out a new painting of Sheamus, and like he came out, I think it was like that Raw after WrestleMania with a dang mohawk, and I'm like, well, that's out of date now. And when you're watching this video, it might be in a week, or when you're watching this. I've got a Rhea Ripley painting coming out before she dyed her hair. So it's a little bit out of date, but also like she didn't drastically change her look, because why should she? She's rad. Yeah, it can it can pose some challenges, but also I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this for a marathon and not for a sprint. So if someone changes things up, I know that I can now have an opportunity to do something new with them, especially with the Select series, where I'm not just doing every person under the WWE umbrella, but all their looks. So like say when Bayley got rid of the ponytail and the hugger look and change it all up, that gave me an opportunity to do something new. Look at all of Alexa Bliss's looks, or Asuka with the different masks. It's all something that keeps it fresh for all of us. All right, last one from Kenny is Bored, which I think I got that one right too. Do you remember your first comic book, or at least the first comic book that made an impression you remember, and why? I got a few comic books before I started actively getting comic books. Like my mom had picked some up for me here and there. There was an adaptation of Return of the Jedi that I got as a graphic novel, I remember. Very young, like two or three, however, whatever year that movie came out. I was born in 1980, so 83, 84, around there. And I still have it, which is pretty rad. But the comic where I was all of a sudden like, I want to get comics from now on. I don't remember the exact issue number, but it was around 87, 88, and it was The Incredible Hulk when he was gray. And the cover is him fighting the Absorbing Man on Hoover Dam. And I was just like, this is rad, man. Like, this is it. This is what made me want to be an artist. And then, like, I went to the grocery store, like, that next week with my mom and picked up an issue of Classic X-Men, where fellow Kansas Cityan Steve Lytle did the cover that had Wolverine popping his claws through a robot Hulk's head. I was like, dude, this is it for me. I want to do this. I want to be an artist. And that's like from a young age, like 7, 8 years old, I knew like this is what I want to do. And it started with comic books, which is cool. Why I still buy a ton of comic books to this day. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the awesome questions across the spectrum of emotions there. Sorry, I don't know why dimes are smaller than nickels. It's silly. And why do we still have pennies? I don't know. Thank you guys for the support. If you want to watch this video a week before everyone else, the paid tier on Substack, which is robschamberger.substack.com. If you want to pick up my art, go to schambergerlabs.com. And please like and subscribe here on the YouTube. I guess I'm supposed to say that towards the end. Thank you very much, and I love you a lot. Bye.